Bismillah ar-Rahman Rahim. We start the 5090 O-level biology last chapter, and this is the last chapter is on inheritance, and this is the second video which follows the first one, which composed of the early parts of the syllabus. Now coming to the G part of the syllabus, the first point that the syllabus says is describe mutation. Now mutation is of two types. One is called a gene mutation, and one is called a chromosome mutation. So there are differences. The example of gene mutation is sickle cell anemia, a disease in which the person suffers from sickle cell shaped red blood cells. They are not the normal Y concave disc, but they are sickle cell shaped. And what is wrong is that the gene for hemoglobin is incorrect. Now, the second type of mutation which we talk about is called chromosome mutation. Now, here it's not a gene, we're talking of an additional whole chromosome or a portion of a chromosome or deduction, either added or minus. So chromosome mutation, and the example is Down syndrome, in which a child born with Down syndrome, every cell of his body has 47 chromosomes. Now normal human cells have 46, but this child born with Down syndrome, every chromosome is 47. So two types of mutations. Number one, gene mutation, in which only one gene on one chromosome is defective. And what are genes? Genes code for one specific protein. You can't say gene for enzymes. You can't say gene for hormones. It has to be gene for pepsin, gene for amylase. The gene mutation, look, on one chromosome, we have millions of genes, of course. But now what is defective is this gene for hemoglobin, which is present on this chromosome. And you know, genes are a portion of a chromosome which code for a characteristic. And then we finally define it, which codes for a protein. Now this gene, which is actually for hemoglobin, and you know, hemoglobin is inside the red blood cells. So the hemoglobin is not correct. It's not made of the right sequence of amino acid. There is one amino acid which is wrong. So these red blood cells cannot transport oxygen. That is why we call this disease sickle cell anemia. Anemia means less oxygen carrying capacity. Now that can also happen when you have a dietary insufficiency. When your diet does not contain enough iron, because hemoglobin requires amino acids, it's a protein, but it also requires iron, just like you're making a table. So you need wood, but you need nails as well, which are made of metal or steel. Because if you hold the wooden pieces together by these nails or these pins which are going to be stuck into the wood, so you need wood and the nails which are made of iron, some metal. So gene for hemoglobin is not correct. So this person suffers from sickle cell anemia. And this is only one defect in one gene on a pair of chromosomes. There will be a pair of chromosomes. And on that, there will be the gene for hemoglobin. So this one is also wrong. This one is also wrong. So both are wrong. If one was correct and one was wrong, even then that works at times, because if it's the dominant trait, then it will work. So this is called a gene mutation. Second mutation I told you was a chromosome mutation. Now the example of this is Down syndrome. Now what happens? The sperm has one of each pair, so 23 single chromosomes, one of each pair. But the ovum here now, instead, there's a defect in the ovum. And this is 24. So now this diploid zygote will have 47. Now this is not very good, because every cell that is formed and a ball of cells is formed from which a human being has to develop. Every cell of this human being has 47 chromosomes. This ball of cells develops into a human being, maybe a boy, maybe a girl. But I'm sorry, this child is not going to be normal. This child has major disabilities. If he's a 10-year-old, probably he has a mental age of a 3-year-old. So these children are not, it's not something which they pretend to be, but they are just like that. It's because of the genetic, it's a genetic disease. So this is called a chromosome mutation. So there is an extra chromosome, and that extra chromosome must have been in the zygote. So now every cell of this human being, whether it's a boy or a girl, will have this defect. Then we come to the fact that what are the factors that increase the rate of mutation? There are only two which we want to discuss. Number one, radiation. Number two, chemicals. Now the chemicals can be tar in cigarette smoke, and that will result in mutation, which results in lung cancer. And what is lung cancer? Lung cancer is uncontrolled cell division, and this results in a tumor. Tumor is a ball of abnormal cells which is not normal. Now the other factor which we talk about is radiation. Now radiation is exposure to UV light. So people who do sunbathing, develop skin cancer because they are continuously exposing themselves to high rays of UV light. So, number one, radiation. That is why it's also written in the X-ray departments that please do not get yourself X-rayed if you're pregnant and it's early pregnancy and you're not noticeable. Then it can cause fetal abnormalities. So the mutation will increase. So exposure to any sort of radiation is not a very good idea because it results in mutation in the DNA. And the DNA, chromosomes are made up of DNA. And that results in uncontrolled cell division or some abnormality, and that creates problems. Next topic is determination of sex in humans. Now, for this, you need to understand something very important is that every female cell, human female cell, there's a reason why I'm saying that because some animals have it the other way around. Here, the human female cell has 22 pairs. Now, these 22 pairs are same in a man cell and a female cell, and these are called body chromosomes or autosomes. They code for the body characteristics. But the 23rd pair is the one that decides the gender. 23rd pair decides what are you going to be. Are you going to be a male or a female? Now, in women, in human females, they are both the same size. And we have decided to call them XX as biologists. But if we look at a male cell, whether we take the male cell from a skin cell or a blood cell or from his stomach cell or from his lung cell, the 23rd pair is not the same size. It's not the same shape, it's not the same size. One is longer and we call that X because it's the same as this X. And the shorter one we call Y. It's called the Y chromosome. So men have less DNA than women. So men have less DNA than women because you see, every woman has 23 pairs of chromosomes, but in males, the 22 pairs are the same, but the last pair, which is the 23rd pair, which decides the gender, is not of the same length. One chromosome is longer, so it's not a pair even. One chromosome is longer and one chromosome is shorter. The shorter one we have called the Y chromosome. Female, human female, their ovaries, in the ovaries, meiosis is took place. And as I told you, the ovum is haploid. That contains one of each pair. One of each pair. So as you know, human beings have 23 pairs. So one of the 22 pairs and one of the X, because you see, women female have XX. So one of the X will be present because one of this will be either this or this. Now, in the male human, the testes, there'll be meiosis and there will be two types of sperms. Why? Because the male is XY. So some sperms out of 50 million, maybe 25 million will carry the X chromosome and 25 million will carry the Y chromosome. Now it seems very easy. If this X and this X fertilize, then this will develop into a female child. So that means at the point of fertilization, decision is made. But if this and this fertilize, so the zygote is going to be XY, so this will develop into a male child. Now let's look at this diagram. All the males are XY, the female is XX. So these are the possible gametes. This is the line gametes. This is parental phenotype, sorry. This is parental genotype, gametes, then offspring genotype, and then offspring phenotype. So there is 50% chance of having a female child and there is a 50% chance of having a male child. So it is a very equal and fair probability. If there is a couple, okay, then why do they have 4 boys or why do they have 5 girls? The reason is it's just a question of probability. Which sperm fertilized which ovum? But it's an equal chance. It's an equal chance of having a male child or a female child. In no way is it a gender favoritism that more girls are born in this world or more boys are born in China or more girls are born in France or Germany. So there is an equal chance of having a male child or a female child. So any couple has just an equal chance. It's just a matter of chance. Then the next topic that we have here is natural selection. Number 2, variation. Number 3, evolution. These are the words I want you to be understanding. And the last is artificial selection so that we get economically important plants and animals. So we become rich. And I often say human greed. Human greed. More money, more money. We are never happy. We're never satisfied. We don't realize it's the money that's not important. It's the values, the principles, how you carry yourself, how much respect do you give to others. Money is not the only thing. That is one you have to realize. I put all these videos for you on YouTube. I don't want any money for that. I'm doing it as a Sadaqah Jariyah. So then anybody who learns from it, well, on the day of judgment, I get a reward for it. Let's first look at artificial selection. Artificial selection is selection by humans. And I always say it's human benefit that you need to look at. If you're looking at an MCQ, look at a thing which gives a human benefit. So selection by humans for breeding of useful traits from the natural variations among different organisms. We want more high yielding wheat crop. We want a speed horse. We want a very good German Shepherd dog. So we select the male and the female and then we breed them. And then we repeat over many generations. And finally we get the desired organism. In artificial selection, the process of selection is conducted under human directions. For example, by allowing only like individuals to breed, breeders have created the great variety of dog breeds and crop plants. The consequences of artificial selection are not very good. Certain inherited traits may cause severe side effects within organisms. Now, example, breeders breed bulldogs so that they can inherit the flat face. Now, this causes severe respiratory problems in these dogs, poor things. Just for a human, I mean, we want dogs with the flat bulldogs with a flat face. And I mean, I'm sorry, but that's something I don't admire about humans. I do not agree with this. I do not agree that you should so much harm the organism just to please your own self that these dogs will actually have severe respiratory problems. Natural selection is number one, four main parts. Number one, overproduction. All organisms overproduce. Houseflies lays hundreds of eggs, frogs lay hundreds of eggs. Number two, there is genetic variation amongst the individuals of a population, and they have different traits. Then all of them are struggling to survive. That is what we call survival of the fittest. Individuals compete with each other for limited resources. And then there is differential reproduction. Individuals that have certain traits are more likely to survive and reproduce because they have the beneficial traits. So these are the three: overproduction, number two, genetic variation, number three, struggle to survive, which we call survival of the fittest. And then, of course, those that are well adapted to the environment will pass on the good alleles to their offsprings. Please, we all have the gene for blood group, but we all have different alleles for blood group. Your blood group AB, so you have IAIB. I am blood group O, so I'm OIO. So natural selection is variation. Then there's environmental change. Then one group is more successful, so that survives and that reproduces and carries on the desirable alleles to their offsprings. So each generation will have those good characteristics. Then the next topic in the syllabus is DNA controls the production of proteins. Now let me give you a list of proteins that we need in the human body: enzymes, pepsin, amylase, insulin, hemoglobin, antibodies. Each gene controls the production of one protein and not a group of proteins, not a category of proteins. So you can say gene for pepsin, you can say gene for hemoglobin, you can say gene for insulin, but you cannot say, this is wrong if you said gene for enzyme. There are millions of enzymes in the body which we need. You cannot say gene for hormones. Why? Because there are hundreds of hormones that the body produces. Growth hormone, FSH, LH. Then you can't say gene for antibodies because there are different antibodies to different pathogens when they enter your body. If the coronavirus has entered your body, different type of antibody will be produced. If the measles virus has entered, a different antibody will be produced. Antibodies are not all lookalikes. Then you can't say gene for pigments. There's a pigment in the choroid layer of the eye. There's a pigment hemoglobin. Syllabus point which says genes may be transferred between cells and organisms, cells between cells of organisms of the same species or different species. Now, of course, this makes sense between cells or organisms of the same species. Like, I mean, there's a grass plant and then it grows by asexual reproduction. So genetic information will go into all the grass plants. Then you plant a mango seed and there goes a mango tree grows out of it. All the genetic information in the seed is going to go into the mango tree and then it's going to give mangoes. The flowers and the fruit is going to be mangoes, can't be apples. And sometimes what we do is genetic information is transferred from one species to another. Like, for example, the insulin gene is put into a bacteria. So insulin gene is a human gene. And this is put into a bacterium. And the bacterium produces insulin for us. But this is, of course, called genetic engineering. Now, so same species and different species. That's what genetic engineers do. And they will put information from one gene, from one organism, one species, like a human insulin gene is put into a bacterium. But usually, of course, they're transferred in the same species. Like a rose bush will develop seeds and the seeds will go into rose bushes. So it's not going to be anything. A rose bush is not going to go into a mango tree. So genes may be transferred between cells, organisms of the same species or of different species. Okay, now with this we will come to the end of this video here because genetic engineer will be in the third video, which is of course a little more complex and I want to give a little more information about that. So this is nearly a 20-minute video, and that finishes the second video on the chapter on inheritance. And thank you very much.